So you take calls from Minnesota in the middle of the night?
Right.
You're live.
So we're going to talk about the kilns today and how to understand the firing process, because that's one of the most confusing things about the kiln. I'd say most people buy their kiln, well, not most people, but this person. I bought my kiln. It sat in my garage for a year because I was afraid to touch it because I didn't understand the firing schedule. And I'd call and I'd kind of tentatively program something, but I'd be afraid of it, and I just knew that disastrous things were going to happen. So the first thing you need to know about your kiln is that it comes with pre-programmed firing schedules that you can use to start with. And everybody says, oh, you just start with those. And so you get this little feeling of intimidation that if you don't know what to do, that you can't start. Please start with the programs that came with your kiln. They're a guideline, and for a long time, guidelines are all you really need. Once you get past some guidelines, you're going to do some pre-programming yourself. You're going to figure out what your projects are. And the best way to figure out what your project is how big is my glass? What do I want to make? And what am I going to use that for? How many layers are in my glass? If I've got a whole lot of layers, I need to know a whole lot more. So let's start with small things. Let's start with just how big is your piece of glass? What does glass do when it gets heated? So the first thing we're going to talk about is just your 1 square of glass. When your 1 square of glass gets heated, it's about 1/8 inch thick, and glass wants to be 1/4 of an inch thick when it gets hot. So when glass gets hot, that 1/8 of an inch is going to shrink up a little bit. These ends of the glass are going to tuck in. They're going to become rounded on the ends, so they're going to get a little bit smaller. And you've probably seen an image like this one that talks about I have one piece of glass, I have fired it, it's gotten 1/4 inch thick, and the size hasn't changed a whole lot. I have 2 pieces of glass, I had fired them, they're still 1/4 inch thick. It shrunk a little here, stayed pretty much the same size here. I have 3 pieces of glass, I fired it, it's still 1/4 inch thick. Well, that glass had to go somewhere because it's more than 1/4 inch here, so it's spread out. So when you're designing your projects, if you've got 3 layers of glass in an area, that glass is going to move. It's going to go somewhere. If you do a full schedule, if you do a full fuse on your glass, it's got to go somewhere. So we're going to talk about when you're firing your projects, how much is that glass going to move? And I've got these samples up here to show you. And you guys can come on up here. You can just stand up here while she's showing this. So here's my schedule 1. So I had the same design that I used 6 different times. And this is from the Joy of Fusing book. He does this excellent exercise of how to understand your kiln. So when you first get a kiln, this is a great exercise to do. So I'm doing my project in 90 glass, and at the same time I'm doing a different design in 96 glass. And I'm going to fire these at the same time on the same schedule in my kiln because I want to see how these 2 glasses with the different COEs are going to react in my kiln. So at my first firing schedule, which was just barely a tack schedule, it looks like I just cut the glass and stacked it here. The edges are really crisp, kind of sharp and pointy. So I fired it, I finished it, I ran my next schedule. I went 40 degrees, roughly 40 degrees higher. That's the only thing that's changing between all my stages of my tack fuse and my final fuse is about 40 to 45 degrees. So the next phase was just a little hotter. I could see that my corners rounded over a little bit. My lines are a little smoother in here. My dot barely moved. As I continue to heat up the process, especially on this 96 glass, which is a little softer, I can see that I'm getting much more round definitions in my 96 than I am in my 90 glass. And each stage of only 30 to 40 degrees, I can see that I'm getting, this is a contour fuse, this is more of a contour fuse, this is kind of a full fuse, and this is a lay it on me mama, everything's flat fuse. So that, I think, is the most important exercise to do when you get a new kiln. is how are my pieces going to fire in my new kiln? And this is one of the most intimidating things because you have 5, 6 different firing schedules that I used here. And I got all these firing schedules I got out of this book, The Joy of Fusing. I just find it has a lot of exercises that you can do, but mainly I just love his description of these firing schedules. And not only is it what's the difference in temperature between each one of these, but Randy also describes in his book how big's my piece. So if I'm firing some earrings up, like something small like this, where this was just a piece of 96 glass that happened to have a pattern on top, when I fired this piece of glass, I could go as hot as I want, as fast as I want, and cool as fast as I want, because it's such a small piece of glass, it can handle all the stress that's going on here. But as soon as I get complicated, I'm getting larger pieces, I'm getting 3 layers in some areas and only 1 layer in the other. Well, that glass is gonna want to all heat up at the same temperature, and we want that glass to all cool down at the same temperature. And if things are not the same thickness, we have quite a challenge in getting them to heat up and cool down at the same temperature. So on your firing schedules, or firing schedules you find on the internet, you'll see that if glass is thick and complicated, we're going to heat it up at a slower temperature. And we're going to cool it down at a slower temperature. Glass never got hurt by going too slow.
Okay. Glass
gets sensitive when we try to heat it too quickly and we try to cool it too quickly. And it especially gets sensitive when we get impatient and we try to open the kiln before it's done, because it gets shocked with that great big gust of cold air. So I heard this expression and I really liked it, that the suspense is killing me, because I don't have the patience when I'm working on something. I want to know what's going on. But your best projects are going to come out when you have your firing schedules planned. So how do I go about planning a firing schedule? You've probably seen these charts, and I'm just going to throw this out here like this. Like, you open up a firing schedule, Bullseye will have one, and Spectrum will have one, and they'll go, hey, I've got this chart. And it's the first thing that comes in your kiln manual, is this chart. And the first thing you do is you look at this and you go, I gave up math in high school. I am not interested in this chart. I would very much like to just put my kiln back in the box and it sits in the garage. So what's happening in the chart? So let's talk about the areas of your firing schedule. So you're going to have things called segments. Your firing schedule is going to be broken up into segments. It's going to be broken up into things called a ramp or a rate. A ramp or a rate. And that is the speed that we're going to get to a certain temperature. We're going to go ramp and a rate. We're going to get to a temperature. And then we're going to hold that temperature for a period of time. Sometimes it's called a hold, sometimes it's called a soak. So let's look at, I'm going to look at this, a full fuse firing schedule first. So the first segment, the first ramp, our first segment, we want to come up at a firing schedule that's starting at room temperature. So I'm at room temp. I'm cold. I've got a lousy marker. Oh well. I'm at room temp and I want to get up to 250 degrees. And once I get to 250 degrees, I want to hold it for 30 minutes. Okay, so my rate is going to be 250 degrees in 1 hour. 1 hour. I'm going to get to 250. I'm going to hold it for 30 minutes. And let me get a darker
yes, because I can't see.
Now this allows the glass to accept a moderate amount of heat. So you're just making sure your glass is all at the same temperature. Do I have the black one?
Yes.
We call this technical difficulties. This is done manually, and it's a technical difficulty. Okay, 250. We're going up to 250. And we should have a donate now button on our Facebook page so you can send money for markers. Okay? So we got 250. is we're going to go 250 degrees in 1 hour. We're going to get to 250. We're going to hold it for 30 minutes. On your kiln, 30 minutes will be like 0.30. So, and some kilns, when you go to program them, some kilns want to know how many segments are going to be in your kiln first. So you program that, you just say number of segments, and then after that, all kilns seem to be the same that are programmable. I'm going to go from a ramp or a rate to a temp to a soak. Okay? Glass is really vulnerable to thermal shock at really low temperatures, and that's one of the reasons that we're doing this in a controlled, slow way. Okay. We want that surface temperature to match the room temperature. The next segment is getting past the thermal shock. So
What is thermal shock?
Thermal shock is heating too fast, too quickly, or too cold, or too quickly. So the molecules in the glass have not had time to adjust, and therefore they shatter. Interestingly enough, scientists argue about, is glass a liquid or is it a solid? Because the molecules of glass in its most fluid state and even in its solid state, the molecules of glass react exactly as if they were a liquid. It is the gooeyest liquid. That's like motor oil. The viscosity of glass is way beyond motor oil. It's gooey. But the solid particles never look like solid particles. So they've defined glass. It's in its own category. It says when you get so bored that you're tired of watching it move, that's when they kind of call it a solid. But what we're used to glass as a solid isn't. So that was boring. Sorry about that. Okay, glass isn't. It's neither a liquid or a solid. So I want to get my next temperature. I'm still going to go at this 250 because it's a nice slow rate. But I'm going to shoot for a second temperature here. So I'm going to shoot for 1150 or 1050 rather. Okay. So what this is saying is that I'm still at a really low and really slow temperature per hour, and I'm going to go up to a temperature where my glass is just starting to get warm and juicy. And I don't want to do that immediately. Now, if I have a small project like earrings or a pendant or something, I can pretty much ramp that puppy up, and I can go faster than this to get to that. But if I have a large project, I'm doing a large plate, I'm doing a complicated project that has more than one layer in it, I want to stay at a slow temperature to get here. So at 250 degrees an hour, I'm looking at 250, 250. I'm looking like 4 more hours before I get to that. I'm going to go 3 more hours because I've already gone a quarter of the way to that temperature here. And now I got to go the rest of the way, but I'm only doing 250 degrees an hour. So I've got another 3 hours before I even get to the point where the glass is going to move. Okay? So in a manual kiln, where you just have the little thermometer on the bottom there, you're going to pick a rate where you can go, hey, my needle's moving a little too fast. I better slow it down a little bit if you're doing a large project. Once I get to this happy state where that glass, this is kind of like the bubble squeeze. We're getting past the bubble squeeze is the hold here. And we're going to hold this one for anywhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Okay? And keep in mind that I'm working on a full fuse here. So this is not your tack fuse. This will be the hottest of the hot, and those temperatures will change by 30 or 40 degrees when you do your sample tiles. So I'm rising, I've got to this temperature, and I want to hold it long enough to get rid of that thermal shock, and I'm going to squeeze the bubbles out of it. This is just a starting point. This is not your firing schedule. Your projects will change based on how thick, and everybody hates that. There's this saying, every kiln is different. You can get 2 kilns off the same line, and they're going to be slightly different. Think of it as, instead of every kiln is different, that's kind of hard to remember. I think of it as my kid. My kiln is different. And it's only going to vary by a couple degrees. And once you've made a whole lot of projects, you're going to get the feel for your kiln. So nobody is expecting you to do this right out of the box.
So you say
Okay.
the first hour it goes up to 250, the second hour you're
Yes.
holding it at 250?
The first hour it went up to 250 and we held it for 30 minutes. Here we started at 250, but we went at 250 degrees an hour. This just happens to be the same number here. We've gone to this, and now we're going to hold that for 30 minutes. Now in this next stage, we're getting past the thermal shock. We're going to our bubble squeeze.
Bubble squeeze?
So our bubble squeeze is our adjustment zone. So the bubble squeeze is where we're going to increase the overall time the glass spends in a temperature. The layers are beginning to soften, but they haven't sealed. They're just kind of loosening up because you want the glass to melt to the next piece of glass. The layers want to relax into each other very slowly, and you want to give trapped air bubbles time to escape. So this bubble squeeze, we're going to go from our bubble squeeze here. We're going to go anywhere from 100 degrees. So I'm just going to put 100 in here.
There's
Here's
a.
a marker.
This is a permanent marker, unfortunately.
Oh.
I have one. Wait. It's right there.
You have?
You see it on the shelf? Right there.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, beautiful.
I know.
100 degrees. Now, we can go from 100 to like 250 degrees. We could still be at this 250, but I want you to see that these numbers aren't always going to match the number in front of them. We didn't start at 1050 here. We're starting at 100 degrees. We're assuming we have a large project if we're going to start at 100 degrees. If we have a smaller project, we can be at 250 again. We're going to go up to 1250 this time. And we don't have to hold it a long time. We're only going to hold it for 10 minutes. We just want to get those bubbles out of here. So this is another very slow at this 100 degrees. The difference between here and here is 200 degrees. So we know that at 100 degrees an hour, this is going to take 2 hours to get to this point. That's just squeezing the bubbles out. Okay? And once we get there, we're going to hold that for 10 minutes. If you choose the slower rise, you get a more thorough bubble squeeze. If I decided that I was going to do this at 200 degrees an hour, I'd get there in an hour. I might still have some little bubbles left. Okay? Larger projects that have more layers, that have more cuts, more layers, they're more apt to need a slower bubble squeeze. Alright, our next one, ramp 4, we're going to go up to 1375 here, 1370 rather. We're going to go to 250. I'm going to hold this for 20 minutes. This is the last part of your bubble squeeze, and it's giving your glass layers that final chance to kind of settle in. And they're going to seal before we increase our temperature even higher. Okay? Is it kind of making sense? Not at all.
But that's okay. I knew it wouldn't. Don't worry. I need
Okay.
to do this a couple times.
Okay, okay. Now we're going to get, now that we've squeezed the bubbles out, okay, so these here are bubble. So we get rid of our thermal shock with room temperature thermal scrub, and we're working on our bubble squeeze here. So our next thing is we're going to get to our full fuse. And to get to our full fuse, we're going to take this to 1465. This is for 96 glass. System 96 glass, or any glass rated 96. So we're going to take it to 445, and we're going to go at 300. So each one of these temperatures, we're kind of building, you can see we're building up our heat. We're holding for a period of time so the glass gets accustomed. We're letting go of bubbles. We're making sure nothing's shocking, nothing's exploding in our kiln at this point. This is a good thing. And we're going to hold this for 10 minutes. So it doesn't need to be there very long, especially if you think about glasses already liquid before you even start, right?
Right.
So those molecules are just all settling in and doing what they need to do. And we're doing this in a controlled way so that our glass doesn't get shocky and break on us later.
Okay, now you said this is the full fuse. So at 1465, it's getting all even.
It's starting to get up to the temperature. So if you look at these samples that we did earlier, you can think about each one of these layers is kind of like the stages that your glass is going to go through. You know, I just chose to stop and take it out. But your glass has to start at this point. It has to go through all of these stages here before it gets to that one. So pretty much we're going to be, when you get to your full fuse, you're about here.
Okay.
And as you're holding that temperature, you're working your way towards something here. So that glass is still moving and settling in each one of these stages.
Okay.
The difference is that if I wanted to just do its contour fuse, my program would be over. I wouldn't keep ramping up. I'd hold it at a much lower temperature.
You stop
You know,
like at
like-
1250.
Well, like in here. So I'm here at the 1370 to 1250. So the temperature in here is where I'm going to start changing things. You want your glass to be hot enough that it starts to move. How much it moves depends on this temperature that you pick. You don't want it to move a whole lot. You're going to work your way up to here. You're going to go to a lower temperature. It's just going to get tacky for the tack fuse. It's going to start to roll over for the contour fuse, or it's going to start to go flat for your full fuse.
Okay.
Like draping. Draping will be another schedule. You don't want to do a full fuse to drape because you don't need your glass to be that liquidy. You just need it to start to move enough that it's bending on its own. Okay? So when we get to this temperature and the amount of time is what's going to make our glass change from the stages to stage. How long am I at that temperature? How hot is that temperature? I'm not at that temperature very long or very hot. I'm a tack fuse. I'm going to build up to a hot temperature, and I'm going to hold it for a little while. I'm going to make sure everything melts flat. It takes time for that melting to happen. It's going to be higher and longer. Okay? Okay, so once we get our glass to the happy stage that it's done one of these things that we need it to do, so this is like the movement of the glass, I would say. The glass is moving to its final position here. Now we pull it down. And that's where, you know, that little chart came in where it's like it's climbing Mount Everest. It's just showing you I'm going up a little bit, I'm going to hold, so the chart will flatten out, I'm holding. I'm going up a little bit, I'm holding for this. I'm holding for a short amount of time, so you see a little thing, and then you'll see it dive. I'm going, you know, I'm holding, and now this is where we're going to dive. Because we've gotten up here, and we're going to slowly bring our temperature down. So we're going to bring it down as fast as possible. So you might see as fast as possible on your kiln. You might see something that says full. You might see something that says 999. Is there one more 9? I think there's one more 9.
There's 4.
More 9s. So all of these things on your kiln controller mean the exact same thing. I am trying to make something happen as quickly as I can. So as quickly as I can, I want my glass to stop moving, stop being hot, and get to a part that I can use. So as fast as possible, I want to get under the movement range down toward the annealing stages. Okay? So I want my glass to quit moving. I want you to get down. I want you to start cooling off. Just quit moving. And once I get to this annealing stage, I want to hold it for an hour. So your kiln might say 60 minutes. I don't think I'd run into one that does. My kiln tends to go to 59, and then from 59 it does something called 1.00. So 60 minutes and 1.00 are the same. So you're not... So, okay? All right. So 60 minutes, you're going to hold that. Your next stage, I've got to my annealing stage, but my glass is still 950 degrees. I'm not just going to open that kiln and say, hey, look what I made. You know? So our next stage is our rapid cool to anneal. Now that we've rapidly got the glass to a point where it's not moving, now we're going to slowly cool it back down. We're working toward room temperature.
Okay, can you explain annealing? What does that mean?
What is annealing? Annealing is the temperature that the glass...
Coagulates, right?
Yeah, I guess it's like the liquid coagulating, but it's not glass will cool off and be at a temperature, but it won't be stable. Annealing means that I've got my glass to a temperature and it's safe and it's stable and it's cooled down in a controlled way.
Okay.
So if you're a lamp worker and you make beads and you don't put them in the kiln later, you just kind of put them in your fiber blanket, that glass never stabilized.
Okay.
When we get glass to around 950, might be 920, depending on the kind of glass. If you're working with lamp working, 945. Different COEs of glass all have different annealing temperatures. So the annealing temperature for 90 glass is going to be different than the annealing temperature for 96. But if it hits a temperature zone and stays there for at least 10 minutes, your glass is going to be okay. And that's annealing is pretty much saying you're safe. You're not going to explode anymore. Okay. So we want to get that slow cool through anneal, and so we're going to come down slowly. So we'll come down at 200 degrees per hour. So from this at 200 degrees per hour, we want to get to 800 degrees. So we know that we're coming down at least an hour, an hour and a half. An hour, 200 degrees.
Just an hour.
So no, it's going to be 30 minutes.
About 45 minutes, right?
45, yeah, you got it, 45 minutes. So we're coming down 200 degrees in an hour. We're getting to 800 degrees. That's our slow cool. We're going to hold that temperature as well for only 10 minutes. So that's going to help. That's our slow cool annealing, right? And then the next thing is pretty much getting to our room temperature again. So we started out at room temp and we want to get back to room temp. So some programs you'll see that it wants to come at 300 degrees an hour. And it takes you down to 100 degrees. Don't open your kiln until you get to 100 degrees. But once you get there, you don't have to hold that because you're already at the room temperature. And sometimes, once you get to this point, you'll just turn your kiln off. And you don't open it. Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm supposed to ask or not because I know she's filming you.
Okay.
So am I allowed to ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can ask a
Okay.
question.
So I got confused up at the top with room temperature.
Right.
It starts at room temperature and
Yes.
it's going up to 250 to begin with.
That's right.
And that takes an hour?
Well, it really depends on what your room temperature is. Let's say I'm in Wisconsin and it's winter and it's like 40 degrees in my house.
Okay.
Because my heater broke. My room temperature is going to take a lot longer than if I'm here in Florida in the middle of summer. It's 90 degrees in my house. But this isn't saying that I'm starting at 250 degrees in my house. This is saying that whatever temperature my kiln is and my house is, I'm going to go at a rate of 250 degrees an hour to get to this degree.
Oh, okay. So 250 degrees an hour. So
yes. So nobody expects your house to be 250 degrees unless
right.
it's summer and it's here.
Yeah. So and then when you get down to the bottom,
Yeah.
to 7, I sort of it was just starting to coalesce for me. So 200 going from 950 to 80, and you figured out how many minutes that would be?
Yeah, I think I figured out incorrectly, but I think we said 45.
45?
Because I've got 950 degrees.
Well, one of you, yeah.
So if I'm coming down to 850 degrees, that would be 100 degrees an hour.
Right.
Right? But I'm coming down twice as fast.
100 degrees
So-
coming down.
No, she said 850. If she only
Yeah, if I
went
came to
100.
850,
okay.
that would be 100 degrees, and I'm going less than 850, and I'm going twice as fast. So it's going to be less than an hour
Right, it'd be
on my way down. So for about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And then I get there, I'm going to hold that for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to work my way down to room temperature again. So you're going to hear your kiln, your kiln elements are going to heat up, you're going to hear clicking. You know that clicking that you hear with your
Yeah.
kiln? What that is your kiln has fired on. It's kind of like your toaster oven. Your kiln comes on, it turns on, it's like, okay, I need power to go to my elements. Click. Power is going to my elements now. Okay, you can't keep the power going to your elements. Your elements would burn up and you'd get way up to these degrees too fast. So the clicking is that turning on and off while it's going. So it's maintaining your temperature. Your kiln gets warm and toasty and they go, hey, I don't need any more power. Click. Hey, I need power. Click. click, 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 click. I'm there, I'm not, I'm there, I'm not, I'm there, I'm not. You know,
I wonder what that
your
was.
kiln has not made up its mind where it's at.
heard
Your
all
kiln
this,
is, yes, but that's it. It's trying to adjust to keep this rate that you put in. So it's trying to hold that rate. I can't, I'm going up to 250 degrees an hour. I'm at you might see it go up to 257. I'm too high. Off.
So at 250 an hour,
I'm at 248. Ah! Back on.
at 250 an hour to get from 250 to 1050, you're talking quite a few hours.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking several hours.
I was looking at
Now
it
you
as
started here because you were at least at 250 before you went to this one.
You're talking 3 hours.
So yeah, so like I got another 3 hours of hanging out
Thank
just
you.
to
I
get
was
to this
looking
point.
at that happened first hour, that
Right.
happened second hour. I wasn't looking
So,
at it as
so you're thinking, okay, it took me an hour, maybe. It should take probably a little less because your room isn't starting out at
yeah.
0.
Now it makes sense.
right?
Thank
Your room is
you.
at something.
Yeah.
So you're going to go up to 250. So roughly an hour, 45 minutes is going to get there. But once you get there, you still have to hold for this amount of time. So you can't go, okay, that's an hour. Okay, that's, another 3 hours. That's another. No, you got to remember your hold times. You got to add those in too for your firing schedule. So it's really good to start your firing schedule early in the morning because you really don't want to leave your kiln unattended while you're doing your firing schedule. Relays do fail occasionally, and they don't always fail in the off position. And the relay is what's making it click. The relay is, hey, power's going to this. The relay's on. Power's on. Relay turns off. No power to the coils. So if the relay breaks, sometimes your kiln takes a really long time to heat up. Well, you might have more than one relay in there and one's gone bad. So you need to replace the relay, and they're not hard to replace. All the kiln manufacturers have videos or instructions on how to do it. We do it here. So sometimes the relay fails in the open position, and that's where you hear, hey, my garage burned down. Something caught fire.
See, that's what I'm
My
scared
kiln,
of.
my kiln didn't stop. So be around when you're firing your kiln. Know that that clicking noise is a good thing. It'll make you crazy, but it's a good thing. It's like, oh, kiln's working, turn it on, turn it off. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. You don't hear a noise? Hope that you're in this cooling down temperature range. Hope that, just pay attention to your kiln. Go
Yeah,
check
because
it.
you've
Go check on
fired
it.
and I haven't. So I
Yeah.
thank you.
So you don't have to be afraid of your kiln. Your kiln is just another tool, just like your glass cutter is a tool. Your kiln is a tool. Your kiln is like, it's no different than like using your microwave for the first time.
It helps when you're talking about the ramp, the rate is per hour. Because I guess I wasn't thinking that first column is a speed, like a speed limit.
Yeah, this is your speed.
Yeah,
This is Go Speed Racer.
I guess that
Question from
Yes.
Thelma.
Yes.
Do different COEs require less or more steps?
Different COEs require the same amount of steps. The difference in the COE is going to be how many layers is your project? How many layers do you have going? That's going to require some of the steps. You're probably going to find several schedules out there where they kind of combine, bubble squeeze, 3 and 4 get combined into one. There's a lot of just 4-step programs where, hey, I've got to this, I've held this for a certain amount of time, I've just turned my kiln off, and it drops these last 2, and this gets combined. So you'll see 4-step programs, and they're fine to use. It's just a matter of experimenting and getting comfortable with what you've got. Did that help, Thelma? I hope.
So now, you were saying the smaller things, like if you're just going to do a little bit of a dot, like, or jewelry.
Yeah, so people sometimes ask about microwave kilns. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I got this microwave kiln, and I want to make a plate. I'm like, no. But microwave kilns are great starter things.
That's not a regular microwave.
if-
This is a special kiln.
It's a little ceramic crucible that goes in your microwave, and your microwave has to have like a certain wattage to be able to handle, because, hey, you're melting glass, people. You're not making soup, So if you're doing a small project, doing earrings or something, or if you started out with a microwave kiln and you're like, hey, I want to make bigger things, I'm going to get rid of my microwave kiln, don't. Use your microwave kiln for your test samples. If I wanted to make little things to say, hey, what happens when I heat up, glass that has a pattern on top. This happens to had to be a piece of Spectrum glass, and when I heated that up, my pattern went to the middle because Spectrum Fusible Reserve just has a pattern on top. It doesn't go all the way through. Like Bullseye Glass pattern goes all the way through. So I got this really nice little edge that happened. So sometimes if I want to see a chemical reaction in my glass, maybe, like you have the Bullseye French vanilla and you have the blue, and sometimes you get that reaction line because the chemicals in the glass are going to react to each other. I know I'm talking crazy stuff now, but you do these samples in your microwave kiln. Poof, I've got a sample, and it only took me, I didn't have to go through 5 hours in my great big bathtub kiln to make this dot. You know, I could just nuke it.
So a microwave kiln isn't a whole machine. It's using your microwave with something put inside.
It's using your microwave. Please do not use your food microwave.
Okay.
Because glass has chemicals and things happen, so please have a microwave specifically for that. But the wonderful thing about glass is that glass is going to melt in your microwave. It's going to melt in a kiln without with a manual controller. It's going to melt with the kiln with the controller. You can melt. If you're a stained glass artist, you can melt stained glass. Now you can melt stained glass to itself. You can't melt glass of different COEs. But if you just want to play around with glass, you can melt any glass. You just have to get it hot enough,
said that, yeah.
long enough, and cool it down in a controlled way.
So the wine bottles are super huge popular, right?
The wine bottles are super huge popular. People are always asking, how do I melt a wine bottle?
Right.
One of the things that happens when you melt glass is something called devitrification, and that is all the chemical components, the silica and everything that glass is made up of, starts to rear its ugly head if things go too fast and too quick. And wine bottles, in particular, have to get up to a nice juicy temperature before they move, because they haven't been tested for fusing artists. That's not their purpose. We're supposed to just
Old wine.
enjoy our wine while we make our creations, not make our creations from our wine bottles, I guess. So that glass is temperamental. And there's things you can do, like you make a DVIT solution, or you buy a DVIT solution and you use that on there to help counteract that heat as you're coming up and down the heat scale, and how your glass is going to react. So all glass can be played with. It's just a matter of how hot and do I have the right tool to do it.
And how brave are you?
Right. And how brave are you? And you know, have courage. Go out there. Nuke some glass. Melt some glass.
Okay, the bricks that are in there that are used, they're pretty expensive to buy. Can you use pottery ones? Those, plates? I have a kiln that has...
You mean the kiln shelves?
Shelves, yeah.
The kiln shelves? You can use pottery ones,
Okay.
as long as they've been... glass is going to fire at a much higher temperature, so you want to make sure that you use good quality kiln shelves.
Okay.
Good quality kiln shelves. And you might find that they crack, and I've heard of people, attempting to use pizza stones. I would not do that, because your oven's only going up to 400 degrees. Your pizza 350. That's going to be, Now if you want to use your kiln shelf in your oven, I would do, but don't use it for anything else. Make your kiln shelf your pizza stone. Get a brand new, very expensive pizza stone. Yeah.
Okay. And kiln wash.
Kiln wash. Kiln wash is when you first get a kiln, like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Vacuum out all the loose debris in your kiln. You're going to have, I went to a vacuum store. I've also gone to Goodwill, and I've gotten a little brush that's still made out of hair, because they're soft. I think it cost me $6 to go to the vacuum parts store and say, give me that little brush. And I dedicate that just to my kiln. And I vacuum out my kiln. When you first get your kiln, you're going to coat it with kiln wash. Kiln wash, it's a ceramic material. It's a clay material suspended in water, and it's just coating the parts of your kiln, not the elements. Do not coat your elements. You're coating the ceramic parts of your kiln so that when your glass explodes or does something because we were impatient, that we're protecting our kiln. If you get a piece of glass, or you buy a used kiln, sometimes you'll find there's a little piece of glass that got stuck to a shelf somewhere or stuck to an element, and people are like, oh, it's not in the way, I'll just kiln wash over it. Well, that glass is heating up every time you fire your kiln, and that glass is tougher than your kiln. So eventually, that hot piece of glass will eat its way through the bottom of your kiln. So even if there's a piece of glass there and it's not in your way, take the time to dig it out, patch the hole. Dig to it. Yeah, there's patch, there's cement, there's things like that you can patch, but don't leave hot glass in your kiln and think it's,
That seems amazing. That
you
it's
know,
tough.
glass is a tough thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about a lot of the things that have been around. Glass has been around. We're finding glass beads from, thousands of years, glass beads. That stuff's lasting longer than iron, longer than, glass. It's tough stuff. It'll eat right through your kiln. Your kiln will not last as long as the glass. If you anneal your glass. Yeah. So,
So,
thanks, world. Any other questions out there? We're good?
I think we're good.
So-
Okay.
There's the kiln paper,
Kiln paper.
and then there's kiln wash.
Okay, so kiln wash is ceramic. Kiln paper is a ceramic fiber. The big difference really in using the two is that if you use a kiln paper, you will often get a matte finish. If you use a primer on a shelf or something, you'll get more of a glossy finish. I like to use kiln paper because I am lazy, and I like to just throw that paper in and make that so if that finish is okay, that it's matte, that side down, I use kiln paper. But when I can't afford kiln paper, I prime my shelves, 5 times in all directions. Let it dry in between each one. This is a art form for patient people.
Is that before every firing you do that? Or just once every few firings? With the kiln wash
With the
5
kiln
times?
wash on my kiln shelves. Okay, so I should say it's every firing, but it's not. If my kiln wash hasn't come up on my glass, and if you look at the bottom of your glass, you might see something stuck to it. I'll do it. I'll try to get away with it one more time.
Okay.
But if I really care about the piece I'm making, and I'm not willing to take a chance, I will take the extra time and kiln wash it.
Okay.
She's got another question.
You got another question? No, she's saying, Kelly, shut up.
No,
If you want to go to lunch.
I got one more.
Okay.
That spray, Bora, whatever, something with Bora. What is? I know that's real expensive. I've never bought
Oh,
it.
the very expensive zip spray?
Yeah.
The okay, so what that spray is you spray your molds. It's not Teflon, but to me it's like Teflon for molds. So I say it's like Teflon. You spray your mold. It's great on steel molds. It's great on molds that have a whole lot of detail. Because your kiln wash is clay particles. And your kiln wash might settle in those details. So once you spray your mold, I think you can get 2 firings depending on the piece. And then you spray again and let it wait before you use that mold again. Now the thing about that is you cannot touch the part of the mold because a really protective, lovely spray will come right up on your fingers and your glass will stick.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
Okay, so somebody told me you can use a stainless steel bowl. I got one at Goodwill to use as a
Slumper?
A slumper, and then put the kiln wash in there, which I did, which would of course all seep to the bottom. How do you,
Yep.
how do you do that? So
Well,
now if I would
first off,
spray
there's
it-
2 things on that.
Okay.
A stainless steel mold is going to expand and contract differently than your glasses.
Okay.
So I would never slump into a stainless steel mold. I would drape over a stainless steel mold.
Oh,
Okay?
Yes.
I would slump into something ceramic.
I get you. That's a
Okay.
good idea.
So that's the one thing. When you get a new shiny piece of stainless steel, fire it in your kiln with nothing on it.
Okay.
Fire it one time with nothing on it. It'll get a little rougher texture. It'll get all the oil and stuff off from it being new and shiny. It will come out of your kiln. It will not be new and shiny anymore.
No.
And it'll be much easier to put kiln wash or spray on.
Yeah, because I did one practice little thing, and it turned all black and dirty looking, and that was normal.
Yeah, that's normal.
I thought I wrecked it. I
No,
did.
that's normal.
Okay.
That's normal.
Okay.
So how long did it take you to learn all of this?
I learned all this in 5 minutes before I gave this presentation. No, I have been doing this for maybe 5 years. I've been playing with the kiln, and I've been doing lamp working for a while. Also, I'd say 3 years of lamp working. There's no time limit on how long it takes you to be an artist. I remember reading an article in the Black Catalog. I want to say it was like Bullseye Catalog 6 or something. And it had a picture of this woman's piece that was in the museum. I was like, oh my God, she's a glass artist. Isn't this amazing? And right next to the woman's name it said, so-and-so has been doing this for 5 years. And I went,